This is Haymaker Combat Sports. Hear it here, coming straight from the source. Only with the real, they ain't here to dress it up. Sweet science, MMA, you can get it all from us. Trust, 5 stars cause it's live. And through the fight game, we can guide ya. Slick talking, putting them in caution. Passing all the goals cause the audio is awesome. What you waiting for? Spread the word, tell a friend. This the podcast where all of the discussion ends. When they start going strike for strike, this the show that'll tell you what you seen in the fight. They ain't playing on the mic, this a welcome to the show. Warm it up for the squad, Haymaker of the bros. I'm a bow wow, you can hear from the pros. It's Haymaker Combat Sports, time to roll.
Welcome back to Haymaker Combat Sports. I am your host, EJ Reed, joined by my fellow host, Aaron Admire, Steve Johnson. How we doing, fellas?
Happy holidays.
I'm here.
Yeah, we got Thanksgiving right around the corner. Y'all got any big Thanksgiving plans?
I'm just going to hang out with my parents and go to the girlfriends and all that. I'm going to make 2 desserts. I'm going to make a cranberry salad jello thing, and I'm going to make a chantilly cake. You ever heard of chantilly cake?
What's that?
Man, it's got like strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries, and like a cream cheese icing. It's multi-layer. I've never done a layered cake, man. I'm gonna get wild tomorrow night.
Oh man, that sounds delicious. You got any big plans, Steve?
Not too many big plans. This is my first Thanksgiving. It's been about 6 months since I stopped eating meat, so this is gonna be my first Thanksgiving. Trying to figure out something what I'm gonna eat as far as variety.
You went vegan or vegetarian?
Vegan is strictly plants, right?
No byproducts, no cheese.
Well, I dip into cheese and stuff, but nothing of no meat. So what was that? Vegetarian, right?
Yeah, it's just vegetarian.
That's what I am.
Did you do it for health purposes or moral purposes?
Oh man, I'm about 33 now, man. You start feeling in your gut what you eating. So that's the reason why I changed.
Man,
for health purposes.
Everybody swears by the carnivore diet, man, eating strictly meat.
Oh man, all types of things gonna be coming out your backside. You ain't careful.
I eat like trash, man. I post that shit on Facebook. Everybody can see the shit I eat.
Yeah, I eat it all too. I don't discriminate, but I heard studies about, you're eating dying flesh and you're eating flesh, so it's rotten in your body technically, but I don't know. I'm gonna die one day, so I'm gonna eat delicious stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But power to the people who can, but me, I can't do it no more.
I'm not mad at that though, man. You got to do what's best for you health wise. What are some of y'all's favorite Thanksgiving dishes of all time?
Man, it gets so much hate. I love the green bean casserole. It's up there. But my favorite thing that my mom makes is she makes the stuffing with the oysters in it. I mean, it's fantastic. That's the only way to have it.
I don't know if I've had I had stuffing, but I don't know if I've had oysters and stuffing.
Yeah, it's good.
A little unorthodox. And from what you're saying, you said it's good though, right?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. If you're into oysters, it's the way to go.
Ah man, now you got my mouth watering a little bit. How about you, Steve? What are your all-time favorite Thanksgiving dishes?
Well, definitely for me, it's the desserts, the different pies. Depending on which year somebody makes it, maybe caramel, maybe pecan. There's people that fight between sweet potato or pumpkin. I'm not one of those, but
there's only one right answer though for that.
What's yours?
You got to go with sweet potato.
Yeah,
that's most people's pick.
Out of here.
And it might not be somebody's like first pick, but I love cranberry juice, cranberry anything, cranberry sauce. Look forward to that each year.
I'm not a huge cranberry sauce guy. I mean, I've grown to like it a little bit more over years. Like if you put it on a sandwich, like the post Thanksgiving meal. But
Have you ever heard of stuffing?
What about the stuffing?
Have you ever heard of cranberry and stuffing?
Mm-mm.
I've heard people do that. That sounds, I wouldn't say weird, but that don't sound good to me.
Hey, it's a lot of unorthodox things. What about how y'all feel about people substituting the turkey for people going with brisket nowadays and then prime rib?
I'm all for it. We did my mom and dad, they did a prime rib a year or two ago. That's where it's at, man. Prime rib's so good.
How about you, Steve, before you quit the meat? What were you, a turkey guy or?
Turkey was good, but it seems that I don't know if people cook it right, but you eat it and it seems like dry, your mouth dry. I was more the ham, maybe with the gravy, or rub it in some gravy. But turkey, I'll have it on my plate, but not as much as the other meats.
Yeah, turkey's dry, man. Like for the whole holiday being, around the turkey is the worst part of the meal.
You think so?
Yeah, man. It's everything else that goes with it. The stuffing, the rolls, the green bean casserole, candy yams. Like the turkey is not the star of the show like it's supposed to be.
I'm with you with like traditional turkey, throw it in the oven, but since like late elementary school, early middle school, my family's been a family that fries a turkey, and that thing is super juicy, man, when you stick it in the fryer.
Yeah. The deep frying it is the way to go. I know a lot of people, smoking meats is a big thing now, so a lot of people are smoking the turkeys.
Oh yeah, that'd probably be like a all day thing, but I'm sure it comes out fantastic. I'm pretty sure my dad throws one in the smoker because I got a big extended family, so I think he usually smokes one and fries one. Smokes pretty good too, but that traditional one in the oven, man, like you said, it's dry. It's not the star of the show. Like if you're gonna do that, you gotta inject it with like all types of stuff.
You gotta brine it. You gotta pull up the skin, put all the butter under the skin. Like you gotta hook it up with some juices.
Man, my mouth is watering, man. Can't wait to get to Thanksgiving now. I could talk about food all day, but we got some other things to talk about in the world of combat sports. So before I talk about the news story that broke recently, I planned on having this show regardless because the rumors were that Bellator was having its final card this past weekend. I hit both of you up. I'm like, y'all watching it? It's supposed to be the final card, and both of y'all saying y'all would catch bits and pieces. I know, me and Amar are watching at the same time, and I know Steve is going to get to watch it later. But I think it was yesterday a news story broke that PFL, after months of speculation, has become one with Bellator MMA. PFL acquired a Bellator according to an announcement by its founders, co-owner Don Davis on Monday, and this report is coming from MMA Junkie. And then while the financial details of the transaction remain unknown, Davis revealed plans to do Champions versus Champions mega event in 2024. And he also told ESPN he wanted to reimagine the Bellator brand and then named it the Bellator International Champion Series, and will run concurrent with the PFL with an 8 off events in 2024. So, fellas, what was y'all's initial reaction when y'all found this news out?
I knew that Bellator was going to get bought by UFC or PFL. Like it wasn't just going to just go away. There's too much on the line there. Whoever bought them got all the contracts with it. So I don't think Dana White in the UFC wanted to take on all those fighters, because here in a little bit, I'll give like a whole story of Bellator and some of the fighters and everything, but it's just not something the UFC wanted to take on. The UFC has a full roster, a lot higher caliber fighters. So why would they need to absorb something? I don't feel like the UFC sees Bellator as any real competition. But the PFL, they're growing. They've been growing for years. I just read something that they got like a $30 million investment a while back. So they're looking to expand and grow. So it was a smart move for them. and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Steve?
Yes, this makes things very interesting. Now, saying I'm a UFC fan, I'm still seeing UFC in my eyes, but it's just seeing the overall spectrum of competition starting and maybe creating a snowball effect. I think that may be in the effect right now, and in 5-10 years later, we might see it. And I think it may be a transition into two organizations coming together. And the first thing I thought is, okay, we just had PFL. We were talking about who's Ngannou's going to fight, and that just added much to the mix. And I feel like not only that, Ngannou has a lot on his shoulders being in the PFL now with new Bellator to make him the main attraction. And if he gets a good fight, I swear we might see or more fights in a row. We might see a competitor, a direct competitor of the UFC, which is PFL.
Yeah, so Admire hadn't really got a chance to really dive deep in the ins and outs of this deal. Is PFL picking up all the Bellator contracts?
Yeah, they absorbed everybody that is currently under contract with Bellator. Goes to PFL, but PFL is going to kind of keep Bellator separate. It's, kind of like that one company that owns UFC and WWE. It's going to be kind of like that. It's going to be two separate promotions, but they're going to be able to cross promote, take fighters from Bellator, move them to PFL, take PFL fighters, put them over in the Bellator, run the two companies, but they're still one.
So how long do y'all think that'll last before they just get rid of Bellator? Or do y'all think it's possible to have them running concurrent like that?
It's possible. To give you an example, UFC bought Strikeforce in 2011, and Strikeforce continued for 2 more years after that. And then UFC picked who they wanted from Strikeforce and brought them over and kind of cut loose the other guys. And that's where Bellator got a lot of its fighters. PFL, back then there was Elite XC, a lot of other different brands of MMA. So I think you'll see Bellator stick around for a couple years and kind of let them shake things out. But PFL is very smart. They do their own thing where it's a league and it's a point system for winning fights, losing fights, and things like that. You have Bellator that has the tournament style. So I expect PFL to kind of merge the two styles and come up with a far more advanced way that we look at fighting, not just a ranking system like UFC has. It's sometimes the fights don't make sense. The brackets and the point system show you who should be fighting who, and that's how they set their fights. So I think you'll see for a couple years.
That's an interesting take. What do you think, Steve?
I think I might agree with that because your business wise, when you're blending a company, I guess you would some people are branded by their fighting skills, right? No matter what they go, I'm looking for where he goes. And then you got people that may be branded by the organization. And I think most fighters are branded by the organization to where if they went to somewhere else, people might not know where they went, so to speak. Maybe they say, okay, I know him just watching somebody you might know on Bellator. I don't think a lot of fighters may transition over just to PFL name. Who knows if business works that way, but maybe having the Bellator name ring a little bit and then, okay, you guys know we transitioned over, and then maybe get rid of it. Maybe that. I can see that.
Yeah, I just think when you have a company buying another company that did the similar things that you do, I just pride and ego kicks in, and they might do it for next year. I think they're just gonna fold it in if they're even gonna do this championship series that they're talking about with Bellator. I think they just eventually fold the company. Like Am I was saying examples earlier, UFC buying Strikeforce, even UFC buying what was the name of
WEC.
Yeah, WEC, they had it running for a little bit, but then they folded all their fighters in there. And
Well,
even yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think what we'll see is PFL does that point fighting system where you get
Mhm.
points for wins, losses, and
Yeah,
method of win. And Bellator has traditionally always been the tournament style. I think you're going to see PFL adopt the tournament style to have a tournament of PFL and Bellator fighters. And that's going to be kind of how they choose who stays and who goes, who they cut loose. If you have Bellator guys that make it well down the tournament against PFL guys, you're going to see them make it in. If you have PFL guys that don't do well against Bellator, they're going to cut them loose. So they basically just PFL basically just doubled their roster, and they're going to be able to have a tournament, and they're going to come out with much better fighters on top. Unfortunately, like any business merger, you're going to see a lot of people lose their contract.
Yeah, I can see that playing out like that. So, as far as being a viable competitor to the UFC, now that they've done this merger, do y'all think that the PFL has a chance to actually be a legitimate competitor to UFC now?
I think they do. They were already kind of on the rise going up. You know, they landed in Ngannou. They've done some co-promotion stuff with, you know, the Paul brothers. They have a lot of people that are on, I don't know if it's ownership, but kind of in their office, like A-Rod, the baseball player. They have a lot of other athletes that are involved with it. So they know how to run the business for the athletes a little bit different than the UFC always being this big bad monster boss, you know, with people under contract. I think you're going to see PFL better ran, and I think they're going to keep doing the promotion stuff with Paul brothers and kind of expand. They're going to be landing bigger contracts. You know, PFL, where do you watch PFL at right now? It's kind of hit or miss. I think you're going to see them be more mainstream, and more mainstream is in front of more eyes, and you get more fans. They're going to be able to put on more events. They haven't always put on a lot of events. You know, UFC's, you know, one main card a month and sometimes some fight nights sprinkled in. I think you're going to see a lot more.
Steve, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but do you think that UFC could actually have a competitor that challenges them? You think PFL could step up to that plate?
As of right now, no, but I feel like over time, in very short time, if they make smart business decisions at the right time, get people in, I think it's a matter of converting people. Like I think Ngannou's a face front of PFL right now, how you pay them fighters. I swear, if they pay the fighters right, if they have the money, I think as soon as you start seeing people leaving their UFC contracts when it's done, start going to PFL. I see that happening if Dana's not careful.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if you're a PFL, if you were smart, when you start signing some of these fighters again, I think the route to go would be to, hey, come over here. We're not going to sign you to a ridiculous 8-fight contract. Come over here, get a shorter contract. And maybe, I don't know if their roster is smaller, or it's not smaller now that they acquired a new company. But if you have a smaller roster, I know you could pay the fighters better. Look at Francis, like you said, Francis Ngannou over there now. So, yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be a competitor UFC. They're basically the McDonald's of MMA at this point. But, I mean, you play your cards right, you could definitely form a competitor that's not a direct competitor, but like a alternative, so to speak.
And that's the thing that I think they should actually lean into, is not being the competitor, but being the alternative. You know, that's why Bellator, to me, I liked it, the tournament style. PFL, I like the point system. They're different than the UFC, you know, and if they could focus on that and pushing that to the masses and get people with that. I mean, UFC started out as a bracket fighting company, and now that's Bellator. So if you could hook people with, hey, we're the original, you know, we're doing it the original way, and seeing the way they pay their fighters and treat their fighters, you're going to win a lot of people over with that. And I think another thing that I know Bellator did, I don't know if PFL does it as much, is Bellator allowed their fighters to go fight in other promotions sometimes between fights. They would get out and go fight in Risen, M1 Global, things like that. And that allows your fighters to go out to a market that might not already watch you. And, you know, they go do a show over in Russia for M1 Global. Russian might like this guy and then start tuning into Bellator or something. So, I mean, it's really, the world is their oyster at this point. I mean, they could do anything they want, and they have time to do it right. They have the fighters now. They have the attention on them. Just do it.
Yeah, I always thought that was pretty cool that Bellator used to do Bellator versus Ryzen. I don't know why UFC, I know Dana's a prideful guy. I don't know why they don't cross promote. Like, that would be major. Like, put the prize to the side. Like, give us fights for other promotions we want to see. But I always thought it was cool that Bellator did that. And yeah, like you said, they geared towards more of the tournament style. So that's definitely a model that PFL could take into consideration now that they absorbed them. But you touched on it earlier that they absorbed all the contracts. They say that, but I got a feeling that not all the fighters, they're not going to be able to keep all the fighters, whether fighters might ask for releases. I don't know, there might be a clause in the contract. So hypothetically, if they don't keep all their fighters, what are some of the fighters that y'all would like to see UFC pick up from Bellator?
Yeah, I think the contract is probably the reason why they're going to keep Bellator a separate thing now, because if they're still under contract with Bellator and they keep it as Bellator, then they're there. As far as fighters, there's a few. Like a couple months ago, we talked about Nemkov, the light heavyweight champion of Bellator. I think he's a great fighter. I'd love to see what he could do in the UFC. I've always wanted to see the Pitbull brothers over there. You know, Patricky and Patricio. Johnny Eblin, he's been the champ at Bellator for about a year in the middleweight division. He's a great fighter. Some of those, but then, you know, you got somebody like Ryan Bader that's the heavyweight champion. This is where Bellator kind of loses me as far as caliber, because Ryan Bader's the heavyweight champion over here, but he had quite a few losses in UFC. In the UFC, he's just a number 10 heavyweight, light heavyweight. He's never going to make it up there with those top 5 guys in the UFC. So, I mean, I don't want to see Ryan Bader move back over. You know, and then we got to remember Bellator's got a women's division too. They got a featherweight and a flyweight. You got Chris Cyborg, who's the champion over there in the featherweight division. She's held their belt since 2020. Is the UFC going to bring her back? I doubt it. I mean, because they had their chance to keep her and they let her go. So, and I mean, their flyweight champion is Liz Carmouche. Liz Carmouche did great her first fight in the UFC, and then after that, it was pretty much all downhill.
Yeah, I'm not gonna call her a bum, but she's definitely a journeywoman. She went back to the UFC.
I think her last was a championship fight not too long ago, was it? Maybe a year and a half where she went to Bellator. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, she did
her last fight in the UFC. She fought
Valentina.
Yep. Valentina. That's back in 2019, and she lost that, and she went to Bellator. She won the Bellator flyweight in 2022, and she's had the belt since then. She's on a 7-8 fight win streak.
Yeah, I don't know if that's saying something about your organization if you got Liz Carmouche in there undefeated since Jeff Brennan, and she just lost Valentina. She's an all-time great, so that's nothing to sneeze at losing to. But
yeah, it's just it's a hard pill to swallow, having a lot of these ex-UFC fighters that couldn't really make it over there. They went to Bellator. Now they're champs there. Can you really justify bringing them back? I mean, there's some that would be okay, but then there's some that you can't really do that with. And I think that's it's a good thing and a bad thing. it would be a bad thing to send him to the UFC, but I like that it gives these, I'll say, gatekeepers a home where they can be a champion.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll touch on that in a little bit. Steve, what about you? What fighters would you like to see come over?
From Bellator to UFC.
Yeah, if that's an option.
Well, I don't know if he's still in there, but of course, charismatic person outside and inside the ring would be MVP Michael Venom Page.
Didn't they announce that he signed with UFC?
Did he? That's surprising. I didn't hear that.
Unless I know Admire is quick with his fingers on the
search. I thought he did come over.
If so,
I want to say it happened like about a month ago. I don't know if we even talked about it on the show.
As a welterweight, or could be middleweight.
He's got to be a welter. I think he'd be undersized middleweight. But that was the rumors. Maybe they never confirmed it because I didn't really follow up on it. Because I think I might have posted it on the Discord too.
I thought there was talks about it,
and it's not showing up. Maybe he didn't officially sign then.
October 22nd of 2023. Dana White confirms the UFC was in talks with him, but nothing has been signed yet.
I hope so.
So that must mean he's a free agent at this point.
Yeah, I can see him signing with the UFC, even though he's up there in age. So this is almost like when Michael Jordan came back with the Wizards at this point. But
yeah, MVP's 36. I mean, dude was on a tear over there in Bellator, and then Douglas Lima got him, and then he lost a decision about a year ago.
Anybody else on your radar besides MVP, Steve?
And what I saw, that Bellator fight, Jackson, he was pretty technical and nice. I can see him in the UFC, definitely.
Yeah. He wasn't really on my radar until this past weekend, and dude is nice.
I didn't even know he was a fighter until I watched it. And I was like, damn, who is he?
Yeah, Jason Jackson. He's beat a lot of the guys that were highly up there, like Ben Henderson. He beat Paul Daly, ex-UFC fighter, and he beat Douglas Lima that I just said that knocked out MVP. So, I mean, he's a good fighter. He's one I would say I'd like to see over there. I think he was on the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, was he?
2015, he was a contestant on the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh yeah, he was on the American Top Team Blackzilla season. Yep.
I got one more.
What's that?
Shouldn't have left the UFC. Can y'all guess? Middleweight.
Middleweight?
Yeah, he left the UFC. Shouldn't have left, but went to Bellator.
Was it Gegard Mousasi?
You're right.
Yep. I knew you were gonna say that.
Yep. He went out, and I don't think Dana wanted to. He was saying because he was whatever his nationality is or whatever. He said it's not marketable. That's why Dana didn't. That's what Gegard said. He thinks.
Oh, I thought Dana White said that. I'm like, man, he's getting bolder and bolder.
No, that was hella bold if he said that.
I mean,
yeah, Mousasi was always a badass fighter. He was in Strike Force. I think he was the champ over there. But I mean, he would put together a couple wins and then he'd lose. Like in the UFC, he lost to like Machida. Uriah Hall beat him. That flying knee was fucking nuts. And then he lost to Jacare. But Mousasi always seemed to me like one of those guys that never fought to his full potential, because when he was on, I mean, he was on.
I think he had a little bit of a winning streak before he didn't re-sign.
Yeah, he went out on a high note in UFC. Like, he's one of those fighters that just chose to go to Bellator. I think they offered him the bigger bag.
Yeah, because he beat his last fight in UFC. He beat Chris Weidman, and I think that was supposed to be like a #1 contenders fight or something. So he was getting close to the belt and jumped over.
And I think it was around the same time. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rory McDonald around that time went over the same time.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and then they ended up fighting.
Rory, he was like kind of damaged goods when he went over, but he went over when he was super young still, because it was like a pretty shocking signing because he still had a lot of gas left in his tank, but he went through those wars with Robbie Lawler, and that kind of took a toll on him. But yeah, he definitely jumped over when he still could have fought in the UFC. Same with Ben Henderson. Like he went over pretty early when he still wasn't completely shot or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But fighters that are on my radar, I like to see over there, like at my thoughts, both of the pit bulls, Patricio and Patricky. I like to see them, even though they're getting up there as well. Aaron Pico, there's a lot of hype on him, even though he took some L's, but he's pretty much bounced back. There's a lot of hype because he came in and wrestling with the wrestling and the boxing background, and he was like a blue chipper. And so it seems like he's finally found his groove. So I wouldn't be mad at seeing him over there in UFC. AJ McKee, there's a lot of hype behind him. He fought this past weekend actually, and he like took one loss, and it feels like they kind of didn't get behind him like they were after he took that one loss for some reason. But like he just, he stood out when I saw him fight when he was still like that prospect, and he ran through the division and won the belt and then lost it shortly after that. But he's still young, man. I like his style. Who else is on my radar? Like Admire talked about earlier, Johnny Eblin. I think he could probably win the middleweight title in the UFC right now. I think he could.
Yeah, for sure.
Anybody else on my? Oh, I got to talk about Habib's cousin. We got to see him over in UFC, but I don't think Bellator is going to let him out of his contract. Usman Nurmagomedov.
Yeah.
And like Admire touched on earlier, like I don't want to see any of the ex-UFC fighters go back to the UFC because none are on my radar besides maybe Gegard. All the other ones are shot. Like I don't want to see those damaged goods. Like no disrespect to any of them because they put the work in, and like Ryan Bader, I don't want to see him in there. I think Czech Congo's still there fighting maybe.
Damn.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong. He might not be fighting, but it's one of those big heavyweights or light heavyweights that are still fighting over there. I can't even remember. I know
Phil Davis.
Yeah, Phil Davis. I don't even know if I want to see Phil Davis. Maybe because the light heavyweight division in the UFC is like not as strong as it used to be. If he wants to put on like fight night cards, I don't want to see him like any like contention matches or anything. Like if he's on a fight night and I'm just chilling at the house, I'm like, oh, it's Phil Davis. I remember him, but I'm not clamoring to see him.
Yeah.
What about this one? I'm on the fence. What about a Yoel Romero?
Damn, I forgot about him. He went silent for a while.
I don't know, man. I mean, he was up there when he left the UFC, but then we just saw, Nemkov handle him. I mean, and how old is Yoel Romero now? He's got to be
40,
50, man.
Oh, he's like 48, I think.
Yeah, he's pushing 50. He's up there.
Oh my goodness.
The only reason I say no is because we always think about his highlights, but he's got a lot of stinkers in there. Like when he just stands there and doesn't do anything, especially the past
good Sean Strickland match.
Yeah, Yoel Romero he's 46.
Okay, so I aged him a little bit, but still.
And he's lost 5 of his last 7.
Yeah, so yeah. I'm gonna say nay on him being back in the UFC, but also I like to see we'll talk about these fights, but I wouldn't mind seeing both of these guys in there. Both of the guys that fought for the bantamweight, Patchy Mix and Pettis. I wouldn't mind seeing them, especially Sergio. He's still young.
Yeah,
he
like I was messaging you. I think Sergio, his game is up so much from when he left the UFC. I think he would do really well now. His game's evolved a lot, so definitely want to see him back in there. You haven't mentioned Nemkov, man. Like you're not interested in seeing him move over?
Yeah, he's good. Not a huge Nemkov fan, but he's got the skills, so he probably be right in contention for that light heavyweight title. Like I said earlier, that's not the strongest division in UFC. So he probably beat Pierre right now just because of his skill set.
Yeah.
But like as far as like fighting style, like he's not really my cup of tea, but he's good. He's probably like one of the best fighters on the roster. But I doubt we might see a couple of the people that we named that are able to get out of their contracts, but like Amar was saying, I think they're gonna keep it separate just so they can keep these fighters on there. And there's no like clauses where they can get out. Like it's still Bellator technically.
I just hadn't. I gotta look this up now. I think Fedor Emelianenko is still under contract with Bellator.
I thought his last one was officially his last one.
Well, I mean, that's such a waste, though, man. That's like the one that got away, the fight that you never got to see happen. You have the MMA fans split down the middle, the ones that think he's the greatest fighter of all time, and then the ones like me that say he's great, but he never fought the best of the best. He was never fighting the best in the UFC, and now he's, I don't know, how old is he here?
He's got to be pushing.
He's
50.
47. Now he's 47. You can't throw him in the UFC now and see what he does against these guys. The time's passed. I wish he would get one fight in the UFC just to say that it happened, that he fought in the big show. He's fought in Pride, Strike Force, like everything except for the UFC. But the ship has sailed, and I mean the guy's lost twice to Ryan Bader now. So,
and I don't want to say like we was talking earlier, he's still under that Bellator contract. But if for some reason they let him go, like why not put him against Stipe, greatest UFC heavyweight versus a lot of people think is the greatest heavyweight in general. Stipe's older too.
Yeah, but I mean, looking at Fedor's record as of recent, he's lost to Ryan Bader twice by TKO, lost to Matt Mitrione, lost to Dan Henderson. Like, dude, ship has sailed. Like, Stipe would probably just beat the shit out of him.
If he didn't have those deterioration losses, I think the more plausible matchup, and I don't think they'll it'll be remarkable, Fedor against Ngannou.
you trying to see Ngannou kill somebody in the cage?
Well, I mean, Fedor fought Brett Rogers. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
He looked like Ngannou, and he was labeled like the hardest puncher in MMA, and Fedor beat the shit out of him. That was like back in 08 or 09 or something. But, I mean, I don't want to see it now. I don't want to see Ngannou against Fedor. I mean, Fedor's got some decent wins, though, too, in the same time that I mentioned those losses. He's beat Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen, and Rampage Jackson. So, I mean, he could fight a gatekeeper if there was a way to get him over to the UFC. But the heavyweights now are real heavyweights. Fedor's 230, 235 should be able to cut to 205, but never did.
Yeah. That ship has sailed. Like, I don't want to see Fedor versus Ngannou, but I wouldn't mind seeing it if they like decided to make it for some odd reason, just so I could see a car wreck. Like, a car wreck you just got to look at because you can't look away because how gruesome it is. That's how it would be with Ngannou versus Fedor. But I think he's officially retired. I don't know if you got that up in front of you, Admire. I don't think he's active still.
I don't see anything about retirement. It would be a fun fight that I don't think ever happened. But this guy ain't gonna fight either. I was gonna say Overeem against Fedor, but Overeem, like, he's lost all his mass.
Yeah, because he's not eating the horse meat anymore.
Yeah, so you can't really do that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who you could pin Fedor up against to make it entertaining.
I say the entertaining thing would be for him to just go into a nursing home and just enjoy his retirement. That's entertaining to me, seeing an old person keep their health. But before we get into this card this past weekend, Bellator at one point used to be the second most popular MMA organization in the country. I remember, man, back when I used to live in Florida, like they be on Thursday. I have like little mini kickbacks, and we throw it on Spike and watch Bellator. And I don't know what happened. So, where do y'all think that Bellator went wrong as far as like their popularity? Because they hadn't been as popular in the past few years, basically this decade. Where do y'all think Bellator went wrong as far as that?
To me, in my opinion, they were always known as the little brother to the UFC, and then they kind of followed in the UFC's footsteps. UFC left Spike TV, and they ended up going there. So they were always like one step behind the UFC, and I don't think they ever got the marketing push that the UFC had. Like if you were watching Spike TV back when The Ultimate Fighter was on and UFC was with them, every commercial was Zions or something MMA related. It had a UFC fighter in every commercial, and Bellator never got that push from the companies or other brands. The cosign, they didn't get it. They even tried doing their own version of the Ultimate Fighter for Bellator. It's called Fight Master.
Yes.
And I mean, it had Randy Couture, Frank Shamrock. I think Coach Greg Jackson was on there. Joe Warren, who was former Bellator champion, but it lasted a season, and it was basically the same as the Ultimate Fighter. Why was the Ultimate Fighter so successful compared to Bellator? Because the Ultimate Fighter had a big push from all the other companies and the cosigns. So that's my opinion on it.
Steve?
Yeah, that's very close to mine. I think that being a growing sport, which was MMA, to be on TV, I felt like UFC being the forefront of all that, especially over here in America, I felt like Dana and them had to wait till other things were devalued to fill in the space when you go up the echelon of channels to be on, right? Like you said, Spike, then it was Fox, and then you're on the big dogs, ESPN, right? So being secondary to UFC, you would imagine they would have to, and even when it looks like you don't want to look in the footsteps of your big brother, you kind of had to, because TV space, and channels is very limited. So when something's up, you don't want to take it. You probably won't have nothing to show your organization with. I think that was definitely had something to do with it, and being on a channel that supports. It was number one of its. It was Spike TV knew that MMA at the time was bringing eyes into that channel to make it valuable to promote. Like you said, Zions drinks, and I remember that Zions. I forgot all about that. What else? Was it tap out shirts? I remember that. A whole bunch of stuff. I think it really mattered. Timing, and UFC just had perfect timing. I mean, you just can't reenact that.
Yep. So stick with me here with this. So when Dana White and Zuffa took over the UFC, they knew that those first couple years were the most important. So they did everything they could to get it out there and get them to grow. So if you look at Bellator started in 2008, and you really didn't see much of them until about 2014. Well, what happened in 2014 was Scott Coker, the former guy, the president from Strikeforce, he was released from the UFC contract because when UFC bought Strikeforce, they kept Coker for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So he got released in like April of 2014. He took over as president of Bellator like 2 months later. And that's when Bellator really started blowing up. Scott Coker's, he knew how to run the company and get some of the better deals, do the better marketing. So I think the reason Bellator never grew to that size is because they didn't have somebody in there doing it properly.
So you think that Scott Coker wasn't the guy for the job?
I think he was. He came in 2014. Bjorn Rebney, the original owner and terrible. Founder of Bellator, he was there the first 5-6 years trying to do all that, and he didn't do all the right business moves. That's why it never took off in the beginning. That's why Bellator blew up starting in 2014 with Scott Coker. He did the right things, but I think they still suffer from that. They're still just in the UFC shadow when, like I said earlier with the PFL thing now, I think they need to lean into being their own thing. Don't try to be the UFC's competitor. Don't try to compete with them. Do your own thing. Create your own, what they have. Embrace the tournament and point stuff. Don't be a competitor. Be better. Create a better product.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points that you made, but looking from it from a bigger perspective, is there like anything that like any competitive sport can do to like compete though, if you think about it though? Because like people just want to look at the best at their whatever they're looking at. You don't see a competitor to NBA or NFL or MLB or hockey or name it, and name any sport. There's no really second competitor that's competing with it.
They're trying. My bad.
Go ahead, Steve.
They're trying pretty hard, changing the octagon into a circle or a triangle. You know what I'm saying? It's not. Everybody is trying to do something new, possibly in the world of combat, even in the boxing area or anywhere. And nothing has caught on original as what's here right now. And until somebody does that, like I think Admire was saying earlier, the format of it, tournament style, which are y'all gonna start promoting, cross promoting? I think all that has a factor also within timing, the fighters and timing to cross promote. And I think a certain timing has to be in place for the ball to start rolling. And I think their most precious, as far as PFL and Bellator, the most precious thing they have, it's almost like since Ngannou is heavyweight, and you can just say he's the baddest man on the planet across MMA or the boxing. It's almost like having Iron Man's heart right now, specifically at this time until Ngannou loses his charisma if he loses. But right now, it's like he's having Ngannou around everybody. He's like, hey, you can't really say you're the baddest when I got the baddest heavyweight, could smash a light heavyweight, middleweight. We have him here right now. So I think that's the last thing or the only thing they got in waiting for opportunity.
I think the way that PFL and Bellator can compete with the UFC is lean into the circus fights with the fucking YouTube fighters, the Jake Paul, like those type of things, because we know Dana White isn't going to co-promote. We know he's not going to circus fight. If they lean into it, they're getting more eyes on it. You're bringing in people that have never watched fights before. And the more people you get, the more money you get. That gives them more revenue to sign the better fighters and pull them away from the UFC. So it is playing the long game. Do different shit in the beginning. Do these circus fights, make your money, and pull fighters away. A lot of them, UFC guys, John Jones, Conor McGregor, they're all company guys. They're not going to leave. But PFL, can pay out the money to pull over an Usman or an Adesanya, those type of guys, and get them over with just a little bit more money. I don't think their hearts are tied to the UFC like some of the guys. So do what they can to make money and pull fighters away.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Like, you gotta separate yourself and present, a different way of promoting yourself other than trying to copy what UFC is doing. So yeah, why not do the circuit fight and bring the YouTubers in and the social media people? But as far as their popularity waning, I think I could pinpoint it directly to them not being on Spike. Actually, when they went to Showtime, putting it behind a paywall, like you got to go to Showtime and find it's hard to find it if they're on Showtime, rather than, even though a lot of people not paying for cable nowadays, but flipping through the channel and you could flip it right to Spike and watch it for free. Now I got to pay for a Showtime service.
Right. Yeah, I think before the Showtime thing, I think what happened is it was bad timing as well. UFC was on Spike. That was the guys' channel. We had so much cool shit on that channel. And then UFC left, Bellator came in, and then Spike shortly after became Paramount, and they got rid of the whole TV for guys thing. And, that's what hurt them. Spike TV, I could leave that channel on all day. I mean, 1,000 Ways to Die, the, Deadliest Warrior, just awesome shows. And you lost all that when it went to Paramount.
Yep, definitely. They definitely tied directly into it. And when I don't understand, once they went to Showtime, they had a opportunity to put it on CBS. Like if you would have put free fights on CBS, I think that would have gained a lot of eyes. They did one CBS fight before it eventually folded. Like I think they should have took advantage of being on CBS more, and maybe it'd be a different story. But I don't know if anything could have prevented them from being bought, because Showtime just got rid of boxing and MMA. So maybe it was inevitable. So
yeah, I think Showtime, they were just too stuck on their boxing thing to give Bellator the attention it needed. And like you said, they could have put the fight on CBS and it would have done numbers. I think it was called Elite XC.
yeah,
they did a CBS fight. It was like Kimbo versus James Thompson or something, and it did insane numbers.
Yeah. And Bellator did one CBS fight earlier this year. I don't know what the numbers were, but if they would have did that regularly, like people would have tuned in. If they did it on Saturdays, CBS, everybody gets that. You hook up your rabbit ears and get CBS. But I'm not keen on the financial aspect of it, and maybe it wasn't a financial success. Maybe it was some logistics behind it why they couldn't do it, but who knows? But yeah, so over this past weekend, UFC had their, I guess, last official card underneath this past regime. Now that the PFL is bottom, UFC 301, it went down.
Bellator.
Oh, I said UFC 301. My bad. Good catch, Admire. Bellator 301. It went down in Chicago at the Wintrust Arena. Prelims. I'm not gonna go through all these prelim results, but did y'all get a chance to watch the prelims?
No, I tuned in for the main.
No, I didn't, but I saw a lot of knockout highlights.
Yeah, there was a lot of submissions on the prelims. I'm going through it, and they had a lot of decisions. But I saw there was one KO, and I went back and watched it. It was Tim Wild KO and Mike Hamill. It was crazy because he wobbled him with a head kick, and then he hit him with like a punch. It looked like a punch out of like a movie or a TV show. And he just like flew back. Like I think it was a straight
right, yeah.
And he just like flew back, and that was rowdy. But I didn't watch like the other prelims.
Yeah, and this card, no fights finished in the first round. This was a long card.
Yeah, you're right. Now I'm looking at it. I was entertained by the main card, but like you said, it was no fights ending in the first round in this one. But yeah, let's get into it, fellas. Let's talk about this first fight. We had Alexander Shabili defeating the Tricky Pitbull by unanimous decision. So it was not a whole lot of action at first. They were feeling out each other. And then Shabili opened up Pitbull with that short right. And it was damage inflicted upon him. And I feel like Shabili just cruised to this fight. It was that lightweight final for, I think it was the semifinals actually. And he pretty much just cruised to the decision. It wasn't a whole lot of action. What were y'all thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, not a lot of action. I mean, Tricky's getting up there in age. I think he's 37, 38. Bellator staple. I mean, dude's had the belt, and Great fighter. It just seems like he's lost a step. I mean, Shabili just completely owned him the whole fight. I think it was unanimous, like 50-45 on all 3 cards or something.
Yeah, Steve.
That's pretty much what I saw. I saw highlights. Yeah, through the highlights, I saw more of, like you said, Patricio being controlled, and I guess if I'm not mistaken, he was bloody too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bloody, which is and how old is he?
37, 38.
Yeah.
37, 38. It's never helps when you're bloody, and I'm pretty sure in the eyes of the ref, plus his performance, I mean, it wasn't nothing to brag about. It just was what it was, and I only saw highlights of it, so I really couldn't get a good synopsis of how. But from what it looked like, I'm like, damn, he's not doing anything to win the fight. So that's what I saw. Now the next 2 fights I saw.
So y'all think Pitbull will make any noise in this new organization, or y'all think he'll just fade away?
I'd say he's probably got another year or 2 left running the tournaments and stuff like that. Might make it up there, might not. I mean, he could win on any given day, but lost 5 of his last 7. I mean, the odds aren't great.
Steve?
Yeah, I don't see him confidently obtaining a spot. To me, he's done what he's done, but I don't think he's a consistent fighter to bet on. To me, especially at his age right now.
Yeah, I don't really see him or his brother doing much in the future, but who knows? Sometimes fighters catch a second win, but I seriously doubt it. So we're going to move on to this next fight. We had AJ McKee defeating Sidney Outlaw by unanimous decision. And this fight is what I love about the new scoring system, because what's his name? Outlaw. He took down McKee in all 3 rounds, but did nothing while he was on the ground. Didn't go for any ground and pound, didn't go for any submissions. Meanwhile, AJ was on the bottom, hitting them with punches and elbows, and he was able to snag the unanimous decision. And I'm not mad at that result. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I remember from that is that McKee was just busy from the bottom, landing a lot of shots. And I mean, I don't know. I imagine the judges are probably the same in the UFC, but it seems like in the UFC they would have gave the guy on top points just for being on top. They wouldn't have paid attention to the bottom guy.
I don't know, man. Not with this new scoring system, I've seen like the UFC judges not taking count for just humping them on the ground as well lately. But like you said, in like 2-3 years ago, yeah, UFC would have gave him the nod.
Yeah, I remember this because me and you were messaging back and forth. Just McKee was very busy from the bottom, and I like that. And he's on my list of people I would like to see make a jump over, see what he can do.
I definitely want to see him in the UFC. Hopefully he gets out of this contract. But Steve, what were your thoughts?
In saying that, does scoring vary between
athletic commissions
or athletic commission? Yeah,
I still don't even know. Like, I think I looked it up once and I didn't really get any clarity. I have no clue. It probably does. Who knows? But it's supposed to be uniform, I thought, but I don't know. But all I know is UFC has taken they've been putting more emphasis on damage. That's all I know.
And this one I also saw highlights of, and it was mostly what's his name with control?
It was Outlaw with control. And I think, didn't we see even McGee towards the end of those rounds able to reverse it? I think he did get a reversal too. Yeah, a reversal too. So and like I said, and me, I remember seeing highlights of it, but I'm thinking I'm getting messed up. I'm thinking of Sergio Pettis in the last fight. But I did see highlights of this, and just from me looking at the highlights, it's looking like he was on the bottom
And who ended up winning that one?
The key one.
McKee won, and he was on the bottom the most time.
Yep.
I don't understand now doing work on the bottom. I can understand that, getting elbows, Tony Ferguson style. But I don't know. That's a iffy because you don't want to be on your back the whole time either. And I don't think that's winning either.
But then on the other hand, you could be have somebody on the ground, but if you're just sitting there not really trying to do anything,
right?
It's ain't a hug fest. Like you got to do something on the ground. So I totally agree with the judging on that one.
I also can't stand, like you said, when they lay and pray. Seeing the highlight, I didn't think he was laying and praying like that, but since y'all saw it, it was just a shit. Yeah. If he can't get back up, then how is he gonna fare well in another organization with a more skillful opponent? I
didn't really like. I didn't like the fact that AJ didn't really seem like he had the tools to get back up like that. I'd have to go back and watch again. I can't remember if he did get back up a couple times.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I remember one round he reversed it and he was on top, but it was the end of the round. But being controlled on the ground that much, you got to have some defense to get back up and do your game. And because you're not going to win those striking on that's praying for luck, striking on the ground to praying you win a fight if you can't get back up. I feel like he needs to do some defense training.
Yeah, because most fighters are not going to be like outlawed. Most fighters will actually try to do something to him if he gets caught on the ground like that in the future. Like they're going to try to finish him, especially if he eventually makes his move to the UFC. He's definitely got some things to work on the ground, but I still want to see him in there. Like that's what I talked about earlier, because he's exciting on the feet, and he was like a blue chipper. And his dad I want to say his dad had a fight or two in the UFC. So we'll see what happens with him going forward. But looking forward to see his future because he's still young. He's like 26, 27. So he's still definitely got the best of his career to look forward to. But with that being said, let's talk about this next fight, because they showed a lot of packages going into this fight. A lot of bad blood between these guys. Yeah, Rafael Stouts defeating Danny Sabatello by unanimous decision. So both guys came out super aggressive. Sabatello tried that flying knee, and Stouts threw out some wild haymakers. And Sabatello took down Stouts early, but Stouts was able to get back up in the scramble. Stouts was able to get a nice little 1-2 combo. And I think he dropped him, Sabatello, for a little bit. But then Sabatello got him back down, and there was a whole lot of scrambling in that first round. And then the first half of round two, Sabatello was a dominant grappler, but about like a minute and 45 seconds left, Stouts was able to reverse it and get some ground and pound. And he got back up and started lighting him up on the feet. And then Sabatello got that late takedown, but Stouts was able to reverse it. I like how Stouts had some grappling defense in there. And I think he was able to steal the end of that round by doing that. And then in round three, Stouts dropped Sabatello with that straight left, which was a big moment in that fight as well. And Sabatello was able to get in that scramble though, and he was trying to work a sub. I thought he wasn't really close to it, but at that point, he was dog shit tired. So like I respect him trying to go for that sub, but Stouts was able to reverse it and get into that top position with about like 2 minutes and 30 minutes left not 30 minutes, 30 seconds left. And then they had that wild grappling exchange for the rest of the round. I mean, it was a whole lot going on with this fight. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, this was the type of fight I could watch just over and over. I wish every fight was like this. It was cool that they had the bad blood coming in, and you could just really tell they didn't like each other, so they put everything into it. And the biggest, takeaway for me is Stouts, man, his scrambling and his reversals and stuff. I mean, another guy that I'd like to see come over, just because, he kind of reminded me of how Tony Ferguson used to be, just all over the place on the ground. So many reversals in that fight. I think there was like 3 reversals in just the second round. Really good fight. I liked it. And then, Stotts, tried congratulating him after the fight. And then there was some post-fight shit talking and all that. Sabatello was just walking away, going to the backstage. Stotts was like talking shit the whole way. I liked it. It was fun.
What was up with Sabatello's shorts? He had some like generic shorts on. Weird.
Yeah, that was different.
Steve, what were your thoughts on the fight?
Yeah, this fight I wasn't able to see, but it seems like I missed a banger because I like a transitional fight where you got 2 wrestlers. They can't get it in that way, transition and get back up and start fighting. So I wish I would have seen that one.
Hey, I sent you the link, so maybe you got some time later this week. Go back and watch it because it was pretty entertaining. Like Amar was saying, I wouldn't mind seeing Stotts in the UFC if his contract expires with Bellator, because he's a character and we know how UFC likes their characters. But let's talk about this co-main event. We had Patchy Mix, the interim champion, defeating Sergio Pettis by rear naked choke, second round. So, early in that first round, they were feeling out each other. Then, with about a minute in, Patchy got that big takedown and controlled Pettis for the remainder of the round. But he didn't do much damage. So I'm like, okay, see what Pettis could do in this next round. Then in that second round, Pettis missed that spinning back fist, and Patchy got him in that body triangle, locked in that rear naked choke, and it was good night and good luck. What were your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I think this was a fight that Pettis really wanted to keep standing up, and it just didn't go that way. Patchy was just kind of ahead of him, setting up the takedown and everything. Not a lot else happened other than that. I mean, like you said, Patchy took him down, kind of controlled him there, and then the missed spinning back fist, it kind of reminded me of when Chael Sonnen tried doing that against the second fight with Anderson Silva.
Yeah. Big mistake. Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you try to get cute, you ended up paying the price, and that's pretty much what happened with Pettis. What were your thoughts on this fight, Steve?
Yeah, thinking of Sergio Pettis, first of all, me being a UFC fan and remembering him in the UFC, I followed a few of his fights in Bellator, but not all of his fights, and I figured that he would have a way better game and I know maybe not wrestling, but and of course we know his brother got all right jiu-jitsu, submitted people. I thought his jiu-jitsu, or at least like you said, he was a stand-up fighter, would get back up and got controlled, and I didn't think he would be choked out that easily, being Sergio Pettis.
Yeah, Patchy Mix he's good, man. But coming into the fight, I thought Pettis was going to take it, but I don't know. What do y'all see Patchy Mix's ceiling at this point?
He'll do good. He'll probably stay over there. I think he's only lost 1 fight in his whole career. His first fight, I think it was his first fight in Bellator.
It was his first Bellator fight. It was against Juan Archuleta.
Yeah. So, I mean, he'll probably stay there. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of big wins to his name. If he can string some stuff together against some bigger names, maybe he could, get the eyes of the UFC. But that's the thing is, we've talked all night about these fighters. How do we get them over to the UFC? Well, they got to get some wins and do stuff impressive. Well, they got to fight higher caliber fighters and get some higher caliber wins. So that's why we need to get some UFC fighters to leave and come over there. We want to see what he can do against, top level. The UFC is looking at it like, we let Sergio go and he beat Sergio. Do we really give him a lot of credit for that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of a tricky situation. I say, see what, if they're going to do champion versus champion, I don't know who PFL's bantamweight champ is, but
me either. Whoever the bantamweight champion is, stick him in there with Patchy. I can't even think of any Bellator because they change it every season with a PFL. I can't even think of any PFL champions right now off the top of my head because they have their playoff system. But yeah,
I don't even think they have a bantamweight.
you might be right.
I think they start at lightweight over there.
Yeah, I don't even think they have women's bantamweight. I think they have a random women's lightweight. It's Kayla Harrison.
They have like a women's lightweight that's a 155, and then they got a women's no, that's their only one, I think. And then they got a featherweight over there. They got 145ers over there. They don't have any 135s.
Yeah, it's weird weights classes over there in the PFL, but yeah, they'll patch in there with I don't know, maybe they just create their own now. Like you said, they don't even have a men bantamweight, so I don't know. We'll see what happens, how that develops. But let's talk about this main event, fellas. We had Jason Jackson defeating Yaroslav Amosov by KO in the third round. So round one, it started off with like a lot of feeling out. A lot of guys doing it. I mean, both guys were doing some feints, and I'm like, all right, I hope it's not one of those fights. Then they started opening up a little bit, but like nothing extremely heavy. Jackson, I mean, that's some of the best takedown defense I've seen in any organization. He thwarted a lot of Amosov's takedowns. I can't remember the final total, but then towards the end of that first round, he landed that nice right hand, and then in round two, like a lot of more defensive prowess shown by Jackson. Like whoever his coaches are, they need to get a raise because every time Amosov would go in for that takedown, Jackson would pretty much swat it off. And then he also got that nasty right uppercut with about 1 minute and 45 seconds left in the round. Amosov got Jackson in the clinch in the final minute, but Jackson's defense was on point. When Amosov got him in that clinch, he wasn't really able to do anything. And then in round three, Jackson rocked Amosov with that uppercut and then that knee with about a minute in. Then with about 2 minutes in, he dropped him with that right. Got some nice ground and pound. And then Amosov tried to panic wrestle. And I don't know if y'all ever seen anything like this before, because I haven't. He pretty much finished them with like I don't know if y'all used to watch wrestling, Triple H, do the pedigree. He like just basically just landed on him and he did a face plant and it was over. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. And that's how he got to win. What were your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the story of the fight. I mean, Amosov is a highly skilled, combat sambo type wrestler fighter. Jackson had just like the perfect game plan of the defense, avoiding all those takedowns, not letting him get in too close all those times. Jackson, I mean, it was a great showing for him. He gets to be the champ now. I don't know where you go with that. That was Amosov's first loss, I think. I don't think Jackson has many losses. He's got some big wins. Douglas Lima, Paul Daly, Ben Henderson. I mentioned it earlier. He's got some big wins to his name. This might be another guy that maybe could get over.
Steve?
Definitely. Most impressive I was watching is takedown defense. Another thing to mention that Chris 3-piece combo before he dropped him into the panicky dizzy mode. And what I was seeing the whole fight to where it just didn't highlight it until the end of the fight. But he was when every time he sprawled, he was so what do you call it? His reflexes were so good that he sprawled with an uppercut. I see they must have worked on that. Just he'll throw that uppercut with the sprawl every time and just be ready. And I think that's exactly what happened at the end of the fight. He threw that, wasn't a Derek Lewis, but it's almost like when you sprawl your body out with the uppercut, caught him directly, face planted. He knew it was over. I think it was one of the most unique knockouts we've seen in a while.
So, repeat that what you just said. Like, how would you explain that again? Like, because he didn't really hit it. Like, he grazed him, but then like he basically just like dropped his hips and then he did a face plant.
He dropped his hips with the uppercut. It looks like as soon as he sprawled his hips out, he's coming with the uppercut too. Like, and he caught him with it while he's sprawling, and his chest hit his made him drop.
I watched it a couple times. Like, it didn't look like he hit clean. Like, he went for it, but it looked like he might grazed him. But then like he.
It sounds like you hear it though. I have to rewatch it. It sounds like you hear it, and then he was like, "You let it go."
Yeah, like what was your interpretation of it, Amaya? That was like one of the most unique knockouts I've seen.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what they compared it to. They compared it to a different fight, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But that style, that Steve's talking about, kind of the sprawl ready after the uppercut, it kind of makes sense because I just looked into who he trains with. He trains with Killcliff, which is where Rashad Evans went after he left Jackson. So this is who he also trains with: Usman, Chandler, Robbie Lawler, Luke Rockhold, Vitor Belfort, Rashad Evans, Gilbert Burns, Derek Brunson, Michael Johnson, all wrestle heavy guys that can also box pretty well. So it kind of makes sense that he was well prepared for that while boxing.
I think he gave him a shout out too, didn't he? In the post fight, Robbie and all that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, man. Those I think it was at Coconut Creek. Is that where they train out of?
This one's Deerfield Beach, Florida.
Oh, Deerfield.
But I think there used to be one down there in Coconut Creek, Florida.
Hey, man.
They all used to train somewhere down there.
They produce some fighters down there, so whatever they're doing, keep it up. Yeah, I think he did. Like you said, Steve, I think he did shout him out. Robbie Lawler, one of those guys. Impressive victory by him. I'm curious to see what happens with him in his future. I'm sure he'll be fighting in those champion fights. And what a way to get a belt in, I guess, the last official card, maybe. So we'll see how they do moving forward. But yeah, from what we know, as far as the news that went this past couple of days, this is probably, I guess, Bellator's last official card. Now they're going to do these championship series. So I know Admire has some history of Bellator that he was able to produce. So what you got for us on that, Admire?
Let me get back to my page. I was just going to kind of breeze through it and see if you guys remember any of it or just kind of give a rundown. So we kind of talked about it, that it was founded in 2008 by Bjorn Rebney. But the tournaments and stuff that they put on, I'll kind of go through those. So the first one that they had, the winners, middleweight, I won't go through every winner because a lot of them have went on terrible losing streaks or retired, but some people still fight. So the first tournament was in 2009. Middleweight, Hector Lombard won it. Lightweight was Eddie Alvarez. So way back in 2009, Eddie Alvarez won the first tournament. Season 2, this is the one where I started really watching Bellator. It was in 2010. Middleweight, the winner was Alexander Shlemenko. If you remember him, he ended up leaving Bellator to start his own MMA company over in Russia. Welterweight that year was Ben Askren. Lightweight, Pat Curran, and featherweight was Joe Warren. Pat Curran and Joe Warren, they used to have a lot of good fights in Bellator.
Definitely remember Ben Askren.
Yeah.
Pat Curran. That was all the way back in 2010?
Yeah, that was 2010. Gee. So it's crazy that some of these guys are still fighting. Season 3 was later in 2010. Heavyweight, Cole Conrad won. I don't know if you remember him. He actually retired undefeated. He kind of just gave up fighting. He used to train with Brock Lesnar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think his last fight was he defended the Bellator heavyweight belt against Eric Prindle 2012, but he retired undefeated.
I can't remember him off the top of my head. I have to go back and do my research.
Yeah,
He's a heavyweight.
yeah, he was a big old boy. And then the fourth one they did, it was MTV2. So this, MTV2
Wow.
was
I
the
don't even
backup
remember him
channel.
being on MTV. That's crazy.
Yeah, MTV2. This was in 2011. The big names on this one, welterweight, Jay Huron won the welterweight. He fought in the UFC before that. That was GSP's, I think, first fight in the UFC. He beat Jay Huron. Lightweight in this one, 2011, Michael Chandler won. He beat Patricky. And then featherweight, Patricio won.
Wow. So the Pitbull's been in the game for a while. This is back in late 2010, you said, or 2011?
That was 2011. So then in the summer of 2011, they did just a featherweight, and Pat Coran won that one. The fifth one they had was late 2011. Heavyweight was Eric Prindle. Middleweight, Alexander Slamenko won again. And then welterweight was Douglas Lima. He won. He's the one that beat MVP for the first time. So he's been around for a long time. I mean, that was 12 years ago.
Jeez.
And then this one, the sixth one they did was started in March of 2012 and ran all that year. Not a lot of big names won that one. Rick Hahn, he won lightweight, if you remember him, but not a lot in the tournament of that one. A lot of these guys went on to lose a lot of fights.
Hey, that's the fight game for you.
And then summer 2012, they had a light heavyweight tournament, and a guy named Attila Vey won.
I did not remember him.
He beat a guy named Travis Wolf. I think Travis was in the UFC for a minute, or maybe did the Ultimate Fighter. Seventh one they did was September 2012 to December 2012. Heavyweight winner Alexander Volkov.
Oh, we all know him.
Yeah, he was Bellator back in the day. Eighth tournament they did started at the beginning of 2013. Again, Douglas Lima won the welterweight. A couple other guys. Emmanuel Newton won the light heavyweight. He wasn't up at the top very long. I think he lost the belt his very next fight. We had a summer series in 2013. Heavyweight, Vitaly Minikov. King Mo won the light heavyweight.
King Mo.
So
I wonder what happened to him, man.
I think he had a fight with Rampage Jackson like 3 years ago. I think they had bad blood for years, always shit talking, but they were never in the same promotion, and then they ended up both in Bellator, and I think Rampage won.
Yeah.
Ninth tournament ran about mid 2013 to the end of 2013. Heavyweight winner, Czech Congo. Welterweight had Rick Hahn win again. Patricio won the featherweight, and bantamweight Joe Warren won that one.
Looked like Joe Warren had like a nice little stretch where he was getting his shit in.
Yeah, Joe Warren, he won a lot of fights over. And then this name I just seen won the lightweight, Will Brooks. I remember Will Brooks.
Will Brooks. He came over to UFC and laid a big fat egg.
I think Charles Oliveira got him out of there. Last fight.
He was hyped up coming in. He was hyped
somebody.
up. Yeah.
He lost to two Oliveiras. He lost to Alex Oliveira and Charles Oliveira.
That's right.
Cowboy Oliveira, Alex Oliveira. Not to be confused with Charles Oliveira.
Then 10th tournament they had was 2014. Heavyweight winner again, Alexander Volkov. Rampage Jackson won the light heavyweight. And
I always forget how early Rampage was in Bellator. For some reason, I'm thinking like late 2000, not 2000, late 2010s, but he was in there like early 2010s. I always forget about that.
Yeah, the last fight I remember him having in the UFC was
he came back for a random fight, and then they're like, you don't have your contract is still with us, and then he had to go right back. I think it was like 2015 or so, wasn't that?
Yeah, so there was a fight. He was in a fight. It was July 5th, 08. Forrest Griffin that he lost, but then he had a few after that. He came back in 2015 to the UFC for one fight against Fabio Maldonado.
Yeah, and they were like, it was like weird because they were like, you still got a contract with us at Bellator. You can't be fighting over there, even though he fought, and then he had to go right back.
Yeah. So, he actually lost to King Mo. King Mo beat him in 2017. Rampage Jackson lost to Chael Sonnen after that. And then for his final fight in 2019, he lost to Fedor.
Rampage, man.
I got
Yeah.
one question. I can't remember. I don't know if he came from Bellator. Where does Shane Carwin come from? The one
he was in UFC. I don't think Bellator existed when he was fighting. It might have just been in infancy, but he fought Brock in like 2010 or
2010. Let me see, because I think
he's only fought in the UFC.
No, before that,
okay.
He had a fight in WEC in 2005. He was a bunch of random local promotions. ROF, I don't remember what ROF was. Ring of Fire?
Yeah, he didn't fight in a major promotion though, did he?
No, it was regional fighting mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, he made his name in the UFC basically.
Yeah, and then Bellator, I think 2014 was when they wrapped up the big tournament style stuff. This is a name that I forgot about in Bellator. The winner of the light heavyweight in 2014 was Liam McGreary.
Liam McGreary. It sounds familiar.
It does.
Yeah, it looks like he retired from fighting in 2019, but he fought everybody over there. He fought Tito Ortiz, Phil Davis, Dimkoff, Phil Davis again, King Mo. Looks like almost all of his career was in Bellator except for a couple little regional fights. But yeah, Liam McGreary, he was kind of, I don't think he was Irish. He was English or something, but he kind of came through kind of at that time that Conor McGregor was getting on the scene and stuff like that. So it sounded Irish. So I think he had a lot of hype behind him. He was 11-0 until he lost to Phil Davis in 2016.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I probably watched his fights, man, but watched so many fights. Some of these guys run into each other as far as my memory goes.
Yeah, so a lot of good times in Bellator. It was
that the last tournament?
Well, it's the last on the list that I have here. There was one after that, but
I feel like they've been doing tournaments up until they were just in a tournament on this last card. They don't have that on the list, like all other tournaments they've been running the past few years.
Nah, my list only goes up to like Bellator 131 that was in 2014.
Yeah, so going back to what you said earlier, company is basically the foundation of it, running tournaments. So, like we said earlier, we like to see PFL incorporate that into them acquiring them. But staying on track for the history of Bellator, what were y'all's guys' favorite moments or favorite fights in Bellator history that I could think of off the top of y'all head?
Oh man, there was a lot of good fights. I mean, the most memorable moment for me though is when MVP caved Santos's head in, man.
Oh man.
I mean, this the most brutal knee that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I want to say we talked about this on one of the earlier episodes. He threw up the Pokemon ball.
Yeah, caught him with a Pokeball. That's hella disrespectful.
Man, yeah, man, how could I almost forget that? That was definitely one of the more memorable moments.
Yeah,
man, it sounded like a eggshell getting cracked.
Yeah,
it was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of good fights over there. That it wasn't always the top fighters; it was just good stuff. Like, you know, I just talked about Will Brooks. I completely forgot about Will Brooks, but like he TKO'd Michael Chandler back in the day. You got to see fighters over there that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Joe Schilling, he was a big kickboxer, and you know, do you remember that in 2009 or 10 where they had the split event, Bellator MMA and kickboxing? They alternated like fights. The rings were by each other. They had it going.
I want to say that was kind of recent where they were doing the Bellator kickboxing.
I remember. I think it was like the first one because I remember I lived in a townhouse.
Yeah.
It was like 2010 or something.
Yeah, they probably did do it early, but they were doing it up to I think at least the 2017 or so. They were still doing it because I remember them like they go on commercial break and they're like, when we come back, it's gonna be Bellator kickboxing. I'm like, what? All right, I guess I'll stay tuned.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. They probably did start like way back in 09. I don't know if I was tuning in at that point though. But yeah. Any other moments that stick out in your head, Admire?
Man, just some of the grudge matches that they had, like Tito Ortiz, Chael Sonnen.
Yep.
I think there was didn't they bring Tank Abbott back for a fight in Bellator?
Maybe.
I can't remember if that's Bellator or Strike Force or what it was, but I remember they did kind of some of these circus fights. I think Ken Shamrock's had some fights in Bellator, maybe.
Yeah, and I'll get into that when I talk about my favorite moments. But yeah, he was in there.
Yeah, I just like that they were never afraid. Like they were never too good for a fight that was just out there. Like Tito Ortiz and Chael Sonnen. Like nobody was asking for that fight. They were both past their primes, but just let them fight.
Steve,
I hope I'm not taking it. I hope I'm not taking it, EJ.
maybe if so, then we'll just have the same fight on there.
Well, moments, not fight. It's a moment for me.
Oh, you already know I was gonna say this, but you might as well get into it. Kimbo.
No, not Kimbo.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna say Dada
Oh
Kimbo.
man.
That was a good one, but mine is Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz.
That was embarrassing on Chael Sonnen's part. You got washed by Tito Ortiz.
He said, the only Tito said the only thing you do is to make money is running your mouth. He was like, Tito, the only thing that runs their mouth is your ex-girlfriend, which is Jenna Jameson or his ex-wife. And he's like, for your information, we were never married. He's like, you fucking punk. It's like, he got it. He was like, that was a nasty line by me.
Yeah, he's like, the only one that makes money is your wife. And he's like, that's my girlfriend.
For your information, we were never married. Like that makes it any better.
Yeah. That was definitely a moment that sticks out. And then Tito ended up beating him too. So double backfired on you, Chael.
Yeah,
fucking submitted him.
Yep. Anything else, Steve?
No, I say a KO. What's his name? He you can tell he's about to do a 360 roundhouse, but he ended it with a right hook. Y'all remember that? I forgot who he's finding. He spent the round and saw that it wasn't there and just went, I think it was an elbow.
Oh, that wasn't MVP, was it?
No, it was a light-skinned cat. Light-skinned dude.
I can't even think of that off the top of my head.
It's
in all the knockout highlight videos you see on TikTok.
One of the best in Bellator. Like he was against the fence, and he was famous for, I think, karate or taekwondo. And he's about to spin and do it, but he knew that leg wasn't there, so he just ended it with the elbow after the spin. I just can't remember his name.
Yeah, if you could find that, send that over. We'll put it on a future episode maybe once we start getting to do the clip of the months again. I'm curious, but
definitely,
yeah, y'all named a lot of the things that I was going to say. With Admire talking about the circus fights and whatnot. That was my favorite part of Bellator. And Steve was talking about the Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz, and then I brought it up for a second, but we talked about this on previous episode. The Dada 5000 and Kimbo Slice. That was a low light, but I was like dying on the floor, belly laughing. But now that we know that somebody was almost dead, like I kind of feel bad for laughing at that. But Ken Shamrock versus Hoist Racy, that was like a memory that I was excited going into watching that fight because I never got to watch any of those guys fight live because I was too young. They didn't even think they were broadcasting UFC live back then. You had to get the videotapes. So like, man, I was like, I get to see Horace Gracie and Ken Shamrock fight, and I think both of them ended up popping hot. Both of them were juice to the gills. It wasn't a good fight, but I just remember being happy I at least got to watch them fight, even though it wasn't that good of a fight. But
Yeah, and I mean, Ken Shamrock lost to him by TKO. I mean, the guy that like basically brought jujitsu to MMA won by a TKO, man. Like
the irony.
Yeah.
As far as the like serious fights, what comes off the top of my head are the Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez, the wars they had.
Definitely.
Like when you think of like homegrown, quote unquote, Bellator guys, that's who comes to mind. Michael Chandler, and UFC picked them up, and I guess Eddie Alvarez is the most successful out of those guys that got picked up because he actually won the championship. Got smoked by Connor. I didn't see that coming. Anything else off the top of my head? And like y'all talked about earlier, the MVP caving the guy's head in. That was memorable as well.
But also, it sticks out to me MVP get knocked out, getting that first loss too when Lima got him.
I can't even remember how that went down. I remember it being a big deal. Like, was it like he didn't get cold clocked? Did he, or was it like a TKO?
It was unique.
Yeah, I think MVP missed, and it was a counter.
He was out cold.
He was out pretty good.
Well, what I remember, I think, how he trying to go in and out, and then I think he caught him on an N-word, and Lima threw a hard kick, and he lost his balance. He tried to get back up, and he clipped him, and then he fell all weird, and he finished him.
Yeah. Yeah, MVP was like trying to get up, and Lima just kind of caught him.
Like literally clipped him on the end of his jaw, like it turned him off.
Yeah, it was like one of those hits you could tell that it just spun his head so fast that it knocked him out.
Yeah. We all know it probably eventually happened. MVP never really fought anybody before that Lima fight. I think he might have had one fight. Was it against what's the guy that got banned from the UFC?
Who, Paul Daly?
Yeah, I think he faced Paul Daly a fight before that, maybe before he fought Lima. But then like he didn't really face any competition, so he's gotta come over to UFC just to. I don't even want to see him in contention. Just face non-ranked fighters just to put on the show because I think he'll get washed by anybody in the top 10. But, yeah. So, but yeah, man, it's kind of the end of an era. So I figured it was only fitting we did a show to kind of say farewell to Bellator as we know it today. We'll see what happens, how they do it moving forward. They say they're going to keep it going, but I don't know. I'm still skeptical to see how it moves forward, but we'll see how it plays out. See if they're able to keep them going at the same time. But y'all got anything before we get on out of here?
The knockout that me and Steve were talking about, it was Raymond Daniels.
Oh, Raymond Daniels. Yeah. The you said it was a light-skinned guy, Steve?
Yeah, he tries doing this spinning back kick thing, but he comes around and turns it into an elbow and has the guys against the fence and just elbows him to hell, like just hard.
Jeez, I gotta go back and watch that.
Yeah, it was pretty nasty. I think it's one of the when it happened. I think that was highlighted for a long time, a year or two.
Yeah, it's a super flashy knockout.
Definitely gonna check that out when I'm scrolling on my phone right before bed. Give me something to be entertained. But if y'all have anything before we get on out of here?
I got nothing.
As we get older, eras die, and hopefully it'll turn into something new.
Hey, I don't think it's the end of an era. I think we're seeing the beginning of something that's going to be great.
Well, let's hope so, because when other organizations are thriving, that's good for the sport in general. But we'll see how it plays out. But we're getting close to the end of the year. We got UFC 296 to recap and preview. And if our schedules permit, we may throw a bonus episode out there for the UFC Austin card, because that's a sneaky good card. But we definitely be back to preview and review Leon Edwards versus Kobe Covington. See how that plays out.
And there might be a boxing match brewing. Shakur Stevenson and Ryan Garcia have been talking shit.
Oh, so yeah, we'll definitely do a boxing show probably at the top of the year, because there's a lot of boxing going on. I didn't realize how many matches until I looked back at the schedule. So we definitely got to figure out a boxing show. But yeah, that'll do it for us here at Haymaker Combat Sports. Until next time, be safe out there. Later.
Hit the takedown, ground and pound. That was from the top. Heel hooking, no more plot to leave you in the